Hey guys, Guggen Barbecue here. Today we're going to see how well this thing holds temperatures and maintains it throughout the cook. I always like to start out with a bed of charcoal. That gives me a really nice bed of coals to start switching over to completely to splits throughout the remainder of the cook. So I'm going to be cooking a pork butt today, and we'll see how well this maintains temperature. I'm going to be monitoring with a meter plus and also an Inkbird, and I'll have a graph at the end to see how well everything went. All right, so I've got my charcoal started. I've dumped it out into the firebox here. Got a nice bed of coals to start. And what I like to do is throw maybe 2 to 3 splits to get this fired up. So we take a look at the wood splits, and it's really, controlling your fire is really about the size of your wood and whether or not it's seasoned, and, the moisture content. This has been seasoned for a really long time. You can see I've got it cut into different sizes or split into different sizes, and it just really depends on what the fire needs. So I'll split things at different sizes, and then that way, if I need a little bit more heat, a little bit longer of the heat to stay at that temperature without adding splits, I'll put a bigger log on. Or if the fire's dying out a little bit and I need the splits to catch really quickly, I'll put one of these smaller ones on. So really it's kind of playing around with your pit and seeing what size splits that you need. So I'm going to throw two of these medium-sized ones on here to start, and we'll get our fire going. And we'll put one right there, and put another one right there. And what I like to do, I put them in parallel just like this, and then when I want to go ahead and add the new splits on, after this has died down, I kind of crisscross. So what I mean by that is I'll throw them on like this, and that way it keeps dropping the coals and keeps producing new coals right where I want them. So when I put a new split on there, it starts really quickly. So we'll get this going, and I'm kind of fighting the weather. Looks like we got a storm coming, and hopefully I can get this meat on here before it starts lightning on me. Another tip is I like to put in, the next splits that are going to be on the fire, I like to put them in here, kind of deflects the heat, and it also warms them up and gets rid of any excess moisture. So that's just another tip you can have in your toolbox, is put them in here, deflects the heat from the meat, keeps it away from directly affecting the side of your meat, and also going to be already preheated, so when you throw them in the firebox, they'll just instantly light up. All right, so talking about the dampers, once you get the wood started, got your flame going, I always run my exhaust damper full wide open. You can see this and the parallel to the smoke tube means that that's full open. And then to get the fire started, I always have this firebox door wide open, and once I get a flame going, then I close it and I leave it cracked open, about this much to get the temperatures up. And then I'll usually cook with the door about that cracked open, and then this intake damper wide open. I always run everything wide open and control the heat with the size of the fire. So keep that in mind. I don't like to close dampers, starve this from oxygen, anything like that. You really want to control it by the size of the fire that you're building. All right, so after about 2 minutes, we've got a pretty good fire going here. I just closed the cooking grate door, and you can see our temperature hasn't really begun to rise at all yet, but we'll come back here in about 10 minutes and see where we're at, if we're ready to put the meat on or not. Sometimes it takes about 30 minutes, 45 minutes to get this stabilized, and the whole process usually takes me about an hour to get everything prepped, get my wood split the right way if I don't already have it split, and to get the coal started, and then get the split started, and then getting the temperature to start to rise. All right guys, so I've got my pork butt all prepped. There's so many videos on how to do pork butt. Really, I just use a binder, something like mustard or olive oil. Then I use my favorite rub, give it a nice rub. I've also got my meat probe in there so we can monitor the ambient temperatures and the internal temperatures. And you can see it's about to come down on me right now. So my temperature really hasn't gotten up to where I want it to yet. But the smoke, it's not too smoky. You don't really want a bunch of smoke, too thick or anything like that. You want it to be thin and blue, like you can barely see mine right now. So we're gonna go ahead and get this meat on the smoker. And you always want to do the thickest part towards the fire. And I always put the meat on the opposite end of the firebox. Anyway, guys, I'll catch back up with you. We got a monsoon coming, and we'll check these temperatures now with the meter, and I'll periodically check the meat and show you how I'm cooking the pork butt and all the tips I have along with managing the fire along the way. All right, guys, so this is how my cook's going and how this video's going. We've got a pretty good lightning storm going on. Woo, that was a big one. I didn't get my temperatures up to 275 before I put the meat on, but that's what I always shoot for, is 275, and that's where I try to maintain my temperatures throughout the entire cook. So just keep that in mind. Wait for that temperature to come up before you put it on. I really wanted to get this on before the lightning and the rain hit, and it's slowly coming up. We'll check it as soon as the storm passes and see how it's going. So the storm's finally passed, and I'm really glad that this did happen. It's not ideal for me making this video, but every cook is not the same. You're not going to have the same ambient temperatures outside. You're not going to have the same exact weather conditions. So you always have to keep that in mind when maintaining your fire. So we finally got our temperatures up to around 250. So like I said, I like to keep mine between 250 to 300. I mean, I'm really shooting for 275. And I've had to put a lot more wood on this fire than I normally would. I burned, after that storm passed, I burned a ton of wood to get this pit back up. And that's because the water, the rain, has really cooled off all the metal. So all that residual heat that I'm normally used to cooking with is just completely gone, and the metal is cold, and it's not retaining the heat like it normally does. So just keep that in mind when you are, you're cooking, whether it's in the winter or whether it's in the summer or whether it's during a storm, if you don't have a covered porch like I don't, that it's always going to be changing, and it's always kind of like a puzzle. So I've got a big fire going in my firebox right now. I'm just glad the temperatures have finally come up, and we're really starting the cook process right now. And this is a good time to kind of talk about smoke. I talked about it right before that storm was coming in, and I was a little distracted from the lightning and the rain that I could see was coming. And there's always such a huge debate about the amount of smoke coming out of your smokestack. So you want to burn a clean fire, but you also want it to be slightly dirty. So this is kind of in between what I've got right now and then like a clean blue tint of smoke is what I aim for. If you just burn a really clean fire and you don't have any smoke coming out whatsoever, you're not going to get as much of that smoke flavor on the meat. So I know I've watched a number of different other YouTubers, and they talk about the importance of that really thin blue smoke. Aim for that, but also aim for a little dirty smoke too if you like a little extra smoke flavor. Now, you don't want billowing white smoke or anything like that, but if you can come between like a happy medium between the blue smoke and a little bit of white smoke like what we got going right now, you're going to have a really good result. So again, we're at 250 degrees, maybe about 245. And we'll open up this firebox and see what the firebox is doing. I haven't checked it in about 45 minutes, and we'll see what it's looking like. Yeah, so I've got 3 splits on here. I normally only run about 2 splits at a time, but just because it is, this metal has got to heat back up now that it has stopped raining. Well, it's still sprinkling on me, but now that we don't have a downpour, that's what I've had to do, and I'll probably add another one here in a minute just to get that temperature up to 275. So let's just do that now. Let's just go ahead and add another split of wood to it. And you can see I keep them inside this smoke chamber like I talked about before. And I didn't get a chance to split these because it started downpouring on me, but we'll get that started. I hope that it catches because it is such a big piece of wood, and I would normally probably split that in half before throwing it on the fire. But you can see, let me close this cooking chamber real quick. You can see how quickly this thing ignites when you keep it inside your cooking chamber to preheat it. I mean, it was so hot I could barely touch it. It burned my hand. So keep that in mind, and you really want these to go up as quick as possible to minimize the amount of dirty smoke. You don't want billowing white smoke. You want it to catch as quickly as possible. And then look at all these coals that have been created. So we started with a bed of charcoal, and then now all these coals that are here are all from the wood that we've been burning. That's what we want to keep maintaining. We want to keep having a nice coal bed, so when we throw a split of wood on here, it's going to catch as quickly as possible. So now that we've got things going, we've got the temperature up to 250. I'm going to try to bump it up to 275. Now you're really just maintaining the temperature. You're really just, keeping an eye on the temperature gauge, and keeping an eye if you have an internal meat probe with an ambient temperature sensor. I really recommend having one, and keep an eye on that. And when it starts dipping down in temperature, set some alarms on your app if you have one that has the capability, and then to come out here and throw another split on it. So that's what we're going to be doing. And then after about 2 hours, I'm going to start, 1 to 2 hours, I'm going to start spritzing my meat once it starts getting a little dry. And I'm going to get that bark a little over what I would like, because after I wrap it, it's going to soften up in what I wrap it in. So I haven't decided if I'm going to do aluminum foil wrap, or if I'm going to do the butcher's paper. We'll just have to see how the cook goes and how quickly the cook goes, because I did start late afternoon around 5:30 to 6 o'clock before I got that meat on there, and I'm going to be cooking this for a while into the night. So we'll just see how it goes and how quickly I want to get this done. Aluminum foil is obviously going to cook this a little bit faster once I wrap it versus the butcher's paper. So we're smoking right along, and it's been about an hour and a half to 2 hours since I put the meat on there, and it's about time to start spritzing. I checked the meat just a minute ago, and it looks a little dry. And what I'm going to spritz it with is pickle juice. So I heard a rumor that Aaron Franklin uses pickle juice to mist all of his briskets and all his meat with, and it's just something that I've been doing since I heard that rumor. I don't know if it makes anything any better, versus misting with water or apple juice, or a mixture of apple cider vinegar and apple juice. But this product I bought on Amazon, not a sponsor. Anything you see in these videos are not a sponsor, but it was a pretty decent deal for a gallon of pickle juice. I think it was about 17 bucks, and it's lasted me for over a year. And you can see our temperatures are right between 200 and 300. We're getting a little hot, but things will cool off here in a minute. And that's something I really want to stress. I know people always worry so much about maintaining an exact temperature. This isn't a pellet smoker. This isn't an oven. You're burning a real wood fire. You don't have to worry so much about a little bit of temperature fluctuations, whether it's 250 or getting up to 300. You definitely don't want to go too low or too high, but if you can keep it in that range, I promise you, your meat is going to turn out really well. So let's go ahead and spritz this meat. Open up this cook chamber. You can see I really loaded up with a bunch of splits to preheat them, all different sizes. And our meat is looking pretty good, a little dry, and that's just the nature of smoking. Let's go ahead, and I've got my pickle juice here in a squirt bottle that I bought off Amazon as well. Not a sponsor. And let's go ahead and get that nice and good. This top shelf is nice, but it's also kind of a pain when you're wanting to spritz the top of the meat. But I just kind of go through the top grate right here, and it seems to work out pretty good. can't complain. I mean, this Pits and Spits smoker is a beast. And if you guys didn't watch my first video, I bought this used. It's about 10 years old, and I buy everything used. My cars, all my grills and smokers, everything's used, except for the pellet smoker that I have currently, which I bought new, which was a mistake. And I'll have a review on that. But I really like to buy quality products at a discounted rate because they're used versus buying something cheaper that's brand new. So we're rock and rolling now. We got our temperatures to about 275, which is great. It's been fluctuating between 250 and 300 for the last few hours. And I have my firebox cracked about, I don't know, about 2 inches. And you can see there's a pretty decent fire going on there. I've just been adding about 1 split every 45 minutes to an hour. And yeah, we're about 3 hours into this cook. We got a couple more hours left. You know, it's getting to the point where we're gonna wrap soon. So our Boston butt is at an internal temperature of 167 degrees. It's been sitting there for about 45 minutes to an hour, so I know it's in the rest, and I'm gonna pull it off and wrap it up in aluminum foil. Overall, this pit has really performed well, even with the thunderstorm that we encountered. So I'm really happy with it, and I'll share the graph with you guys a little bit more in the video. And we'll go over, you know, all the ups and downs as far as the temperature fluctuations, and I'll discuss, you know, adding wood and you know, maybe cracking the door a little bit more than what I showed you earlier, depending on what I needed the pit to do. All right, so we're taking a look at the graph now, and you can see where we started. I was really struggling getting the temperatures to come up to around 250 to 275, but after about an hour, we started getting it in that range, and we maintained it in that range all the way throughout the cook. So the only times that you see it dip down below 250 is when, you know, I'm opening up the cooking chamber, or when I'm adding a piece of wood and I'm opening up the firebox, and then it quickly rises again. So that's the thing, you know, just keep that in mind, that you're gonna have some fluctuations, and it's gonna be just something that is the nature of the beast when you're using an offset smoker. And then you can see I had a really big drop off around, I don't know, the 5 hour mark. You know, see that it goes below 200 degrees, and that's because I took the meat off with the thermometer and then wrapped it in aluminum foil before I put it back on. So overall, this was a really, really good cook. Like, the meat turned out really well. I'm excited to share it with my friends and family. And if you guys have any questions, just put it down in the comments. I'll be happy to answer anything that you may have. And on the next video, you know, I'm not sure what we're going to do yet, but it's definitely going to be another fun cook on one of my smokers. So I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video.